Oh, hello, great readers. I'm Belchan.
I'm Nimakung.
I'm Van Chan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you a part of Great Expectations.
S.
Great Expectations. Charles Dickens. Shep. Tid Sek 1. My sister. Mice. Joe Gargery was more than 20 years older than I. Expression meant, and knowing her to have a hard and heavy hand. As upon me, I suppose that Joe Gargery and I were both brought up by hand. She was not a good-looking woman. My sister, by hand. Joe was a fair man, with curls of flaxen hair on each side of his smooth face, pot mixed with hair on whites. He was a mild, good-natured, sweet-tempered, easygoing, foolish, the lower sort of Hercules in strength, and also in weakness. My sister, Mice, Joe, with black hair and eyes. Was possible she washed herself with a nutmeg grater instead of soap. She was tall and bony, and almost always wore a coarse apron, fastened over her figure behind with 2 loops, and having a square impregnable bib in front that was stuck full of pins and needles. She made it a powerful merit in herself, and a strong reproach against Joe, that she wore this apron so much, though I really see no reason why she should have worn it at all. Or well, if she did wear it at all, she should not have taken it off every day of her life. She was voted to enter our house, which was a wooden house, as many of the dwellings in our country were, most of them. At that time, when I ran home from the churchyard, the forge was shut up, and Joe was sitting alone in the kitchen. Joe and I being fellow sufferers, and having confidences as such. Joe imparted a confidence to me. Tate, sitting in the chimney corner. Mice. Joe has been out a dozen times, looking for you. Pill. And she's out now. Is. It did Joe. And what's worse, at this dismal intelligence, I twisted the only button on my waistcoat round and round, and looked in great depression at the fire. Ticklow was a waxened piece of cane, worn smooth by collision with my tickled frame. She sat down, said Joe, and she got up, and she made a cravat tickler, and she rampaged out. That's what she did, said Joe, slowly clearing the fire between the lower bars with the poker, and looking at it. She rampaged out. Has she been going? Joe, I always treated him as the largest species of child, and as no more than my equal. Well, said Joe, glancing up at the Dutch clock. She's been on the rampage this last spell. About 5 minutes. Pill? She's coming. Get behind the door. Old chap. I took the advice. My sister, mice, Joe, throwing the door wide open and finding an obstruction behind it, immediately divined the cause and applied to Claire to further investigation. She concluded by throwing me off and served as a connubial mostly at Joe, who, glad to get hold of me on any terms. Where have you been? You and Monkey, said Mice. Joe, stamping barefoot, and wore it. Or I'd have you out of that corner if you was 50 pips. I have only been to the churchyard, said I, from my stool, crying and rubbing myself. Churchyard, repeated my sister. If it warns for me, you'd have been to the churchyard long ago, and stayed there. You did, said I. And why did I do it? I should like to know, exclaimed my sister. I whimpered. I don't, said my sister. I'd never do it again. I know that. But my foot strayed from that question as I looked disconsolately at the fire. For the fugitive up on the marshes with the iron leg, the mysterious young man, the file, the fuge, and the dreadful pledge I was under to commit a larceny on those sheltering premises, rose before me in the avenging cause. Ha, said Mice. Joe, restoring to Quertes station. Churchyard. Indeed. You may well say churchyard. You too. One of us. By the by. Had not said it at all. You'll drive me to the churchyard betwixt you. One of these days. And though, as she applied herself to set the tea things, Joe peeped down at me over his leg, as if he were mentally casting me and himself out, and calculating what kind of pair we practically should make, under the grievous circumstances foreshadowed. After that, he sat feeling his right side flaxen coals and whisker, and following Mice, Joe about with his blue eyes, as his manner always was at scolly times. My sister had a trenchant way of cutting our bread and butter for us. That never varied. But sometimes got up and into it, and sometimes a needle, which we afterwards got into our mouths. The loaf, in an apothecary kind of way, dexterity, and trimming and moulding the butter off round the crust. And she gave the knife a final smart wipe on the edge of the plaster, and then sawed a very thick round off the loaf, which she finally, before separating from the loaf, hewed into 2 halves, of which Joe got one, and I the other. On the present occasion, though I was hungry, I dared not eat my slice. I felt that I must have something in reserve for my dreadful acquaintance, and his ally the still more dreadful young man. I knew Mice, Joe's housekeeping to be of the strictest kind, and that my larcenous researches might find nothing available in the safe. My trasses, quite awful, top of a high house, all plunged into a great depth of water, and it was made the more difficult by the unconscious Joe, in our already mentioned Freemasonry as philosophers, and in his good-natured companionship with me, It was our evening habit to compare the way we bit through our slices. New exertions. Tonight. Joe several times invited me. By the display of his fast diminishing slice. To enter upon our usual friendly competition. But he found me. Each time. With my yellow mug of tea on one knee. And my untouched bread and butter on the other. At last, I desperately considered that the thing I contemplated must be done. Circumstances. I took advantage of a moment when Joe had just looked at me and got my bread and butter down my leg. Joe was evidently made uncomfortable by what he supposed to be my loss of appetite and took a thoughtful bite out of his slice, which he didn't seem to enjoy. He turned it about in his mouth much longer than usual, pondering over it a good deal, and after all gulped it down like a pill. He was about to take another bite, and had just got his head on one side for a good purchase on it, when his eye fell on me, and he saw that my bread and butter was gone. Stared at me. Were too evident to escape my sister's observation. "What's the matter now?" said she, smartly, as she put down her cup. "I say, you know, what a Joe," shaking his head at me in very serious remonstrance. "In, old chap, you'll do yourself a mischief. It'll stick somewhere. You can't have chawed it." "What's the matter now?" repeated my sister, more sharply than before. "If you can cuff any trifle on it up. In. I'd recommend you to do it," said Joe, all aghast. Manners. By this time, my sister was quite desperate, so she pounced on Joe, and then, taking him by the two whiskers, knocked his head for a little while against the wall behind him, while I sat in the corner, walking guiltily on. "Anne, perhaps you'll mention what's the matter," said my sister, out of breath. She looked at her in a helpless way, then took a helpless bite, and looked at me again. To be continued.